Cool. Hello, hello. We're going to get started here in a couple of minutes with our HMIS Lead System Administrator Monthly Webinar. Welcome. We are going to take a couple minutes at the beginning just to let everyone get settled in the room, make sure we have the numbers we expect. So, a few housekeeping things while we wait for numbers to tick up. Just know that you are muted, and the computer audio is the way to listen to us, but if you need a call-in number, you can submit a question and we can provide that for you if you're not able to hear. You should be on this call if you are an HMIS lead or an HMIS system admin. You may also be somebody who is invested in the data strategy in your community, and so you're joining on behalf of that role. You may also be participating in the ESGCV uploading due to CARES Act funding, so we do have a regular topic on this call around that. So any number of reasons why you might be joining us today, but we're sure glad you are. Thanks for taking the time. Sorry for the delay of a week. We thought that was the appropriate way to revise this month's schedule. We'll go back to the third Wednesday of the month next month, and don't anticipate that that will change at all. And we also have listed all of the anticipated meeting dates for the rest of 2021 on the last slide, and we'll continue to work against that schedule and notify you through the HUD if anything changes. So again, you're all muted. We are going to record this and post it like we normally do. It takes us about a week to post the recording and the slide deck and the Q&A and all the good stuff that goes along with this call. So give us some time, but it will be there on the hub, and you'll get an email about that through the listserv. Today, during the call, and also if you need to keep working with us after the call on a particular issue, do try and note the slide number that you are asking a question about when you ask your question, because sometimes it's going to take us a while to get back to a question that was asked about a slide that we have long moved beyond. So definitely give us a little bit of context if you can, both during the call today on the Q&A box, and if you end up needing to put in an HMIS AAQ after the call. So with that, let's say hi to Meredith and Fran and Brian and Scott and Jesse are all here with us today. This is our normal crew, and their full titles and names are there for you. Melissa is also with us on the back end and can help you with any technical issues that you may be having. So definitely reach out to any of us through the Q&A, and we'll be happy to try and resolve whatever issues you have going on. We have a big full agenda today. We're going to go over some reporting reminders, some LSA stuff, some NHSCC stuff. The lead products are out and are continuing to be posted, so we'll link you to those. Brian has some vaccine information. Meredith and Scott have ESGCV information and fiscal year 2022 data standards stuff, and I will go over some of the system performance measure information that is available to you on the HUD Exchange. So let's get into it. And I think actually these are HUD updates, and I will hand the slide off to Fran in a second, but I did want to remind you that the point time count and housing inventory count probably happening if you didn't get exempted this week for you, and you'll report those numbers into the HDX 1.0. Sometime soon. We haven't announced those dates, but it will happen. You'll get an announcement through the HUD Exchange listserv. I did want to point out, in particular, we've had this come in through the AAQ desk, through the SSVF grantees. Through this call, we've had the question whether those veterans that you have housed in your communities using the SSVF Emergency Housing Assistance, EHA, whether those folks should be counted as sheltered on the PIT count. And the answer is yes. The VA would like to see that data and for them to be counted as sheltered veterans on the PIT count. So if you have veterans in EHA, hotel, motel, using those vouchers on the night of the PIT, make sure to count them as sheltered. You don't need to do extra work in HMIS if you're an SSCF grantee. You've been recording them under the data collection rules for tracking EHA and HMIS. You'll want to pull that number out of HMIS and make sure you can adequately count them in ES shelter project that you've added to the housing inventory count in HDX 1.0. We will have plenty of more detailed information about that when the HIC-PIT data submission guidance comes out. It's coming soon, and there will be more information, but we did just want to make sure you, HMIS leads, it might not fall on you to do anything about this, but your COC should be reporting EHA veterans served on the night of the point in time count as sheltered for purposes of the PIT. So there's also system performance measures due. Fran, you want me to just keep going? The deadline is March 1st for those, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the system performance measures at the end of this call so that you can get a little jazz to get your numbers in and right and get those in by March 1st, 2021. Okay, it'll go Jesse, and then it'll go back to Fran for NHSDC stuff.
All right, thank you. So we are at the tail end of this LSA process. It's coming to a close. For many of you, the deadline was 1/15, and so at this point, you should have already confirmed your data. If you did get an extension, that goes through 1/29 at midnight Pacific time. After that, you'll receive your final error warning file, which will be on HDX 2.0 by 2/5. And then you'll have those 3 business days after we have marked your data set complete to go ahead and confirm that data. There will be no additional extensions granted. This is the real last extension. So if you were hoping for something else, sorry about that. We will be moving into the usability reviews shortly, so you might be contacted after the deadline with questions about your data that may impact usability. I also wanted to take a minute to just thank all of you for all of your extremely hard work. We do understand the amount of time that it's taking to get through our questions and the flags and to work through issues with, you know, the code and project setup and all of those things that come up during this LSA process. So a shout out to all of you. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Jesse. Okay, Fran, HMIS lead products and NHSDC, you're up.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about NHSDC for a moment. Exciting, spring 2021 is right around the corner, and NHSDC and HUD is partnering to pull this conference off. It will take place over 3 weeks, and there'll be a couple days a week that sessions will be offered, and it will include community sessions, NHSDC community sessions that you're all familiar with, and HUD sessions that you're probably familiar with if you've ever attended an NHSDC conference. We're excited about the topic, of course, very timely as we have been struggling to provide services that are data-informed services to address the pandemic. And then, HUD will always provide those kind of foundational HMIS presentations that are essential for a lot of folks that are trying to build their capacity and that are new to this work. We always have new HMIS folks to this work. One of the things we wanted to draw your attention to was NHSDC's new diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. You should go take a look at it if you haven't already. They have put out a call for proposals highly encourage communities out there to share your good work with your colleagues and consider submitting a proposal. You'll see the dates there. April 12th through the 30th is when the conference will be held. It'll be virtual. And then the proposals are due February 18th. So yes, consider submitting. And I also want to talk about HMIS lead products. So we've talked about this on a few calls now. I'm very excited to say, as of today, we have a few of those that have been published and are now available online. So you have both the links to the actual documents, and you have the link to the main page that contains all the documents. We'll actually hopefully have one more, the HMIS tools for contract management, also released today. We're hoping to see that by the end of the day, or maybe it'll be tomorrow morning. But you can go and take a look at these products, and we may be digging into them a little bit more over the coming months. But these are the information that you're seeing in these products. A lot of this information is stuff that's been presented in sessions at NHSDC, and some of them we have on the HUD Exchange already in recordings. We've recorded some of the sessions and posted those online. So what the information that you're seeing is kind of nicely packaged for HMIS leads and vendors to take a look at, but none of it should be, if you've been to those sessions or if you've been on this call, nothing shocking, new, or nothing out of the ordinary. But I think that really important stuff to help build communities' capacity and provide new resources to help do what you're doing better. So go ahead and visit the sites and take a look at that information. And we'll get into more of it later. So let's go on to the vaccine, and I'm going to turn this over to Brian.
Thank you, Fran. So vaccine information in HMIS. To start off, there is no requirement or mandate to have vaccine information in your HMIS. And there's not going to be any expectation on any kind of reporting up to HUD on that kind of information. This is all really for to really enhance your local systems and for local planning. So some communities might already be using their HMIS to collect vaccine information, and if you are, fantastic. There's no need to stop or change anything you're doing. If it's working for you, fantastic. Keep going with it. Some other communities might have like some super strong connections with their public health department, and they've really already thought through the ins and outs of working with people who are experiencing homelessness, and if that's the case, also great. Keep going with that. But then there's regions that are going to want to think about using their HMIS as like a value add to the data collection systems that currently exist. So to that end, we're working with the national partners, in this case, National Healthcare for the Homeless and the CDC, to give some recommendations across the partners using the Immunization Information System data standards and HMIS data standards as a starting point for what data you could collect in your systems and how you might think about using that data once it is in your system. So we are hoping to have something on that out in relative short order. Fran, did you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to put out there that, it's really important for, HUD to underscore to folks that when you're collecting vaccine data on, whether folks have received the vaccine and you're putting that into your HMIS or whatever other data collection system you may be using to gather that information, that that it's never being used to make determinations on whether folks receive housing or services. We want to make sure that if someone has not received the vaccine, that they're not being turned away. And that may seem like an obvious thing, but once these things get programmed into our HMIS and our folks are using it on the front line to start collecting that information and they're intaking people, some of that kind of stuff gets lost. So you need to make sure that if you are collecting this stuff in your HMIS, that you're doing a lot of training and making sure those excuse me, the frontline folks know it is not used to do any kind of eligibility determination on housing and services. I'm going to turn it back to Brian.
Thanks, Fran. And last, we've heard a number of things about HIPAA concerns with collecting the vaccine information in your system in the first place. And just wanted to reiterate the point that William made on office hours is that if you weren't a HIPAA covered entity before you started collecting the vaccine information, you're not going to become one if you start to collect that vaccine information. There's a couple of things that have already touched on this, the first being the Coordinated Entry Management and Data Guide. That's got some really good, relevant HIPAA-related information for you to review. And I think every time I've spoken on any webinar in the past 6 months, I've reminded everybody that you need to update your privacy policies if you haven't done so already. And by update, I mean get them in line with the 2004 HMIS Data and Technical Standards, because the uses and disclosures of your data are outlined in your privacy notice. You, of course, can't have unlimited disclosures of data, but how you use it, who you disclose it to, what you collect, and how that's done is all outlined in your privacy policies. And when COVID first hit, there was this great document that's linked here, and I will put it in the chat, about how you can go about updating your privacy policies. So I will ask myself a question in the chat in a moment, and I will answer my own question. And while I'm doing that, Meredith, I believe you and Scott are up with technical updates.
Hi, everyone. I can't click over on the slide. Would someone mind doing that for me? One more back. Perfect. Sorry about that. Window's a little off. So some ESG CV reminders. Hopefully these are familiar reminders at this point, but all of them are important to go over. First and foremost, I think everyone is probably aware that the Q1 reporting period ends on January 31st, which is this weekend. Hopefully by now everyone has also received requests for bundles and have either been able to submit or are currently reviewing the bundle request. If not, we recommend getting in touch with your recipient as soon as possible and start talking through next steps with them. They should understand what their responsibilities are to complete the reporting in this window. A couple notes on quarterly and cumulative bundles. First up, just want to do a quick review of terms. When we're talking about the initial reporting period, it's that unique window that is from January 21st, 2020 to September 30th, 2020. And we kind of keep hitting it home because it is something that gets referenced for cumulative reporting now until, let's just say forever, or for the time being. So Q1 is referring to the more specific window of 10/1/2020 to 12/31/2020, which is what's being reported on now alongside cumulative. That said, beginning with Q1, bundle requests will come in two forms. There will be a quarterly and a cumulative bundle request, and the date ranges will be shared in the link that's received through Sage. And this will be the same for each subsequent quarter. As far as projects missing from the initial report goes, there are some projects that recipients may have retroactively funded back to the initial period, but they did not include in that initial report. For these clients, their data will be reported on in Q1, and no changes need to be made to that initial report. Last note is on late starters and early enders. Respectively, this refers to projects that have come online or closed out during a quarter, in this case, Q1. In either case, the recipient's responsibility is to update the project start or end date in Sage and indicate that accordingly so that the correct links are sent out through Sage. So I think that's all I have on my end, so I'll turn it over to Meredith.
Thanks, Scott. Sorry, folks, if you were seeing a different slide. We're not really sure how that was happening, but you'll get all of the slides, like they mentioned earlier, after the call. So moving on to talk about the FY 2022 data standards. I think we've talked about this before, but we just wanted to give you sort of an update of where we are and a reminder of what the timeline is for the fiscal year 2022 data standards. When we're talking about fiscal year 2022, just remember we're talking about October 1st of 2021. You know, I'd like to keep it complex with our dates and fiscal years and whatnot, but we're talking about the data standards that will go live on October 1st, 2021. So at this point, all of the federal partners and HUD have submitted requests for changes to the data standards that would go into place on October 1st. HUD and their federal partners are working through a process right now to review those changes, vet those changes, and approve those changes. They all have to be signed off on by March 5th. After March 5th, HUD and a bunch of TA providers will be working together to put all of the data standards documentation together. So specifically, the data standards and programming specifications, which we will release to HMIS vendors on April 1st, and then we will turn around and release them to COCs, HMIS leads, and everyone else on May 3rd. We do give that month lead time just to ensure that there are no major issues, give the vendors a chance to get familiar with the changes that are forthcoming, and be prepared for the questions that are very certainly going to come once these changes get into the hands of the HMIS leads. So that will all be happening in the spring. Then on August 3rd, we're shooting for having the HMIS program manuals posted to the HUD Exchange so that you all can do your training. You can make sure that whatever needs to be done on your end with your users can all be completed and all then go into effect on that October 1st deadline. So one of the things, Melissa, if you want to put that poll up, you could now. We want to ask you all your feedback on a particular topic that's come up in the data standards. HUD is looking at ways to potentially make updates in the race and ethnicity data elements. There's been a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion for years, really, at this point, about making sure that these elements are inclusive and have enough representation for all of the different communities across the country that are collecting this race information. So we know that many vendors, many communities have added additional race or ethnicity fields and then, are potentially mapping those back together. So for example, maybe in your community, if you have a large Mexican population, you have added Mexican to your data collection process, but then that maps back to the Hispanic Latino fields. Maybe you've added Vietnamese as a race, which then maps back to Asian. So we're looking for your information. So we're looking for, your feedback and the experts in the field that have implemented these sorts of changes before we go and make any changes in the data standards. So if you could let us know if you've made those changes, if you could also send us your contact information if we had any additional questions that we could follow up with you. Just a side note, if you put your email and contact information, that is going to be public in that chat or in that poll box there. But if you don't mind, just put your email in there, or you can send it to us privately in the question box. So yeah, so we would love to know if you have made those changes, what changes you have made. So in your comments there in the examples in that text box, if you could give us specific examples of what you have done. So if you have done Mexican, you've added Mexican to map to Hispanic Latino, that would be very helpful. So we're going to leave that poll, that text box up for a few minutes. I know lots of folks are still writing in there, but I think we can move on, or we can sit and wait. Mary, did you want to chime in? I haven't looked at anything that's come in there. I've just seen it go wild.
Yeah, let's just do a couple of reiterations of some answers that we've given so far to the questions that have come in. So will we get to see them before they're released? Yes, we always go over the data standards, and we'll do that, and that'll be the big agenda item in the March call. So join the March call if you want to get a preview of the data standards. It's all very exciting. We have come at this group, right, too, over the last couple months and asked various questions and kind of reached out. AAQs are a big part of where we get our input at NHSDC. We took suggestions from that fall conference. So it's all coming together as well. You guys know it rolls up, a lot of changes roll up through the federal partners. and are at the direction of the funders that pay for all of the great work that you're doing and want to see certain things in HMIS. So yes, we will go over all of this. No, there won't be draft documents released. We release the actual documents in writing in their final form along the schedule that Meredith went through. But we do talk and we'll share as much as we can prior to the finalization of those documents with you on this call. So hang out with us. The other question was fiscal year 2022. Sounded like that must be wrong, but the dates of fiscal year 2022 are actually October 1, 2021 through September 30, 2022. So it's that federal fiscal year that we're talking about. That's why we talk about them as the 2022 data standards. They will, whatever comes out of this change process and gets finalized come April and May, will need to be implemented in your systems locally October 1, 2021. So yes, it's the fiscal year 2022. You start working on them October 1, 2021. What else? Brian, are there any other kind of hot topics before we move on to system performance measures?
Nothing major right now. There's a couple in ESG CV world, but Scott and Meredith are diligently going through those.
Okay. Cool, and we'll have a lot of time at the end, so I'm not going to take very much longer on our system performance measures, and we're just cruising through this content today. Great job, everyone. So I'm going to move on, I think, or do you want to leave the poll open? I think we decided I can't share my screen and leave the poll open. In any case, I'm going to go over.
I think we can move on, and I appreciate everyone's commentary and feedback in the poll or in that chat box. I think if you have others, you can feel free to submit that feedback, but I think our primary concern right now is if we want to talk to people who have actually implemented some of these changes in their systems. So we do want to make sure we get the email addresses for folks that have submitted or who have made these changes in their system. Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, no, totally. And again, we have plenty of time at the end of this, so we can come back to that if we need to, or you can keep adding stuff to the Q&A if you want to respond to that poll too, and we can categorize it. So what I wanted to walk through, this is kind of the cheerleading section here to like get you excited to submit your system performance measures. And it's because the data's out there. We've been doing the system performance measures for a heck of a long time now. The data is due from your COCs into HDX 1.0 by the 1st of March. So now that we've kind of been able to move a little past the critical LSA stuff the last couple of months, best way to put it. And you know, I did want to also remind you and make sure you kind of felt good about some of that data quality cleaning and some of the difficulty of the LSA. You know, at the end of the day, it actually does result in improvements. Particularly, we think you're going to see the improvements in your data quality when you go to submit your performance measures, system performance measures this time around. So it's like, you're improving the data in HMIS, and you're using HMIS for all things, you know, APRs, CAPRs, and the system performance measures reports, and it should continue to show improvements in data quality as we tackle each of these events. So what you can find, and I just wanted to walk you through a quick couple of ways that I have used these data that are available in the past. So the first one, and the one I like the most, is when you find the system performance measures page on the HUD Exchange. Pretty easy to Google this or use the resources tab to find it. There's a data tab, and it's got two links. One is to like a kind of nicely formatted Word document. This one also leads you to the Tableau visualizations. We know there's a lot of Tableau folks out there, and you can go and actually, you know, grab the data set yourself. These are the Tableaus that HUD wants done, the box and whisker plots against each measure, and you can go and sort through all of the data that's there on the Tableau. You can also see some Power BI data and download that set as well if that's more your jam. And then there's a PDF that does kind of a summary of the data that's there, and that's updated each year. But the one I like more than any of those is the Excel spreadsheet that you can download that will give you tabs of data, and I've already got it downloaded here. So going back as far as 2015 this is the data that has been submitted year in and year out. You have a tab for each year, and after you submit your fiscal year 20 data by March 1st, then we will add that tab, and you'll have even a larger data set to play around with. I think one of the things that's really helpful here is you can see COC award amounts. You can see AHRP categories, so you can kind of shrink down to find other COCs that are in your category. You could either go find like COCs, sibling COCs to compare yourself to that have the same COC award amount. That doesn't mean that your funding sources across the board are equal, obviously, but this can kind of give you some sense of narrowing down kind of a like set of COCs to then go and walk through the results that your COC is submitting for system performance measures versus or comparatively to other ones. You can also do that in the Tableau if you want to. So by clicking into the Tableau, you have the ability to go shrink down to AHR category and also to search specifically by a certain set of COCs. So if you are looking, and many people do kind of ask us this question through the AAQ or through this webinar format, how are we doing? How are we comparing to others? How are we successful or not compared to other folks? And that would be one way that you could go and find some information to kind of guide some assumptions or to assess yourselves locally and think about, modeling, system modeling, all that stuff. We do plan on the February webinar to have hopefully bring a Stella person on who can talk a little bit about the modeling capabilities available to you, because now that LSA data has been submitted, right, there can be some comparative analysis work going on locally too. But the system performance measures are out there. I'm just going to say one more time, this is just kind of a little bit of cheerleading. Like, you can go and find your COC, you can make sure that what you submitted in the past, adds up to what you thought it would. You can kind of do a comparison for yourself as you're submitting the next set of system performance measures. You can kind of analyze how you compare to other COCs that are kind of similar to you, on and on. I'm going to stop sharing now and go back to the Q&A. Were there any questions that came in, Brian? Anything I was unclear on in that system performance measure?
Just a couple people asking for what those links were, so I was going to get those out to everyone. And
yeah, they're on the, and they're on this. So I put the links. The first one is to that HUD Exchange page, so you'll have the link to that, and then the second one is to the public Tableau. And again, you can jump out to the spreadsheet from the HUD Exchange. You can get to the Tableau from the HUD Exchange too.
And there was one acknowledgement of the pain that went into the data quality cleanup of the LSA, but excited that it was going to leverage that for the system performance measures.
We hope so, you guys. I mean, it can't be not worth it, right? So hopefully you're seeing some improvements to your own data quality. Hopefully you're seeing some ways that you can, use the data yourself. That's you guys know already. That's the way to make it really good, is if you are trying to answer some questions or model your system or whatever the case may be locally. So we appreciate your time, and continue to give us feedback too on what other things we could be doing with system performance measure. I know a lot of you, you're so smart. You know, you go grab the system performance measures off the Tableau, and we've seen a ton of great other Tableau takes on the system performance measures and ways to assess the data. So go for it. That's why it's out there, and that's what HUD is happy to see happen with this hard work that you've done. Fran, anything else? That is kind of our last slide. Like I said, we cruised through really fast today, so we can spend a little bit of time in Q&A, but did you want to add anything to the system performance measures conversation?
No, that was great. I'm glad you had a chance to show all of that. That was wonderful. I hope folks use it.
We've had it on the agenda for a while, but we've been too full up.
Yeah, it was nice to finally get to it, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn my attention to questions that are in my queue, unless there's something else that you want me to address, Brian. I'll just quickly go through the last resources tab, and I think land us, again, if you got asked to put it in the AQ or you have more follow-up you want to do, you can reach us through the AAQ. You can go to the SysAdmin Hub to get the monthly webinar archives. There's lots of stuff in there to go access, and that's where we'll post the next slide, today's recording and the slide deck from today and everything will go through there. And there's our list of meetings for the year. Now we're at the last slide. Anything anybody wants to kind of talk about verbally from the cute questions that have come in? Feel free, Jesse, Meredith, Scott, Ryan.
Nothing specific on my end. I don't know if there is anything ESG CV related that either Scott or Meredith want to talk about, but I did just want to publicly acknowledge that there are some of you right now that are working on your LSA, your system performance measures, and your point-in-time CAT and your HIC all at the same time. And we know that, and we appreciate all your hard work. That does not go unnoticed.
I don't have any that are really necessarily for the group, but I am working on a couple that have been assigned to me. So they're very specific.
I'd say I'm in the same spot right now.
There was one question about, oh, sorry, Mary, go ahead.
That's okay. I just got to this one that is actually a good thing that I'm sure everybody's kind of wondering. Is there a deadline prior to October 1st for vendors to have the data standard changes fully implemented? There is no required date, but we do talk a lot on why the vendor, one of the reasons the vendors get the documents a little ahead of the leads is because we do kind of talk about having them implemented in their system with enough lead time, hopefully like a month's lead time, for you to do trainings before that October 1st deadline. But there is nothing that is like mandated or required for earlier than October 1. Meredith, anything else to add there? I know you were answering questions.
No, I was listening and reading at the same time, though, first time, and I think you nailed it.
Okay.
Do we have a date for when the HDX is going to open for pay and HIC reporting?
Brian.
We don't have that date yet, but we will make a formal announcement through the listserv, so you'll be able to, you'll get a notice that way.
There was another question about temporary reductions in shelter bed due to social distancing. What does that look like on the HIC? When COVID first happened and social distancing measures started to get put in place in emergency shelters, we put together a what to do with your HMIS setups and your inventory in this moment document, which is right now getting responded to in the chat. So that should answer all of those sorts of questions.
Somebody asked in a question about the impact of LSA submission on funding, COC funding. And this is just, I'm going to say this across the board for anything that is a requirement that we have that may have been a scoreable element on a past COC NOFA. So I can't speak to a future COC NOFA because we have no idea what's going to be on it, and it's illegal for us to talk about it, right? We're not allowed to speak about what's in an active NOFA or a future NOFA. But in general, what I can say is that, you know, what we do is in a NOFA, we have elements that we score. It's a portion of the, you know, every piece is a portion of an overall score. So when you have something in a NOFA that that you're not able to meet a certain standard in there, sure, it can impact the score. I have no idea, you know, what the score is, or if it's a little, a lot. We have no idea, but it can influence it. But it's one of many things, and so usually doing something is it's not one thing that impacts a COC's overall funding. It's a myriad of things, and so you have to look at overall what your COC is doing. But you want to think about, you know, overall your community, kind of look at your community as a whole and scan how your HMIS is doing, the health of your HMIS, the capacity of your HMIS, and if, you know, in whole, all these things that are required that generally become scoreable elements are required in a COC NOFA that you're to report on, and you're not doing well in those things, then start to look at those resources that are available on the HUD Exchange, make requests for technical assistance, continue to show up here and get support, do all those things that you can do to get information and help to build the capacity of your community so you do better at being able to meet those requirements.
Thanks, Fran. We're getting a couple of questions back on one of the first things we talked about, EHA and SSVF, and we agree. It's confusing. You've been putting your EHA data in the RH project all along, and you should be, and that's what the VA wanted their data tracked as. And now we have, for the first time ever, there's a large portion of EHA funded hotel motel vouchers being used that we've really probably, it's likely, and maybe this isn't the case for you, but I think for a lot of us, they weren't counted as the sheltered folks on past PITs. But there are a lot more now because EHA was the way the VA delivered their COVID response in part. So it's something that we're grappling with. I do expect that the HIT PIC guidance that will come out will kind of be really thoughtful and hopefully help us all reconcile how we're going to have a sheltered count on one hand for PIT-HIC, a shelter in our inventory for HIC, and a count of people in shelter for PIT, and it not be the matching data type, right, project type in HMIS. But we definitely don't want extra data collection work going on. We don't want SSVF grantees to be told to now enter a bunch of veterans into an ES project when they've already done the data collection that's been required by the VA all along for EHA. So it's a tough reconciliation, but we're trying and hoping that enough information around the logistics of what to do and how to do it and how it's going to look in HDX once you go to submit your PIT-HIC data for the year, how enough information will help reconcile it down the road if there's ever a time when, I don't know, somebody looks at inventory versus counts of stuff and tries to make sense of it. So we've got, of course, some more inventory questions, and you know, we will not only be doing a refresher inventory training on February's call, that's kind of the plan for February's agenda. So we'll walk through some stuff in February on that, and also there is some training videos out there, but I think they're outdated because they talk about inventory. They talk about the information date that used to be in the inventory data element, and so it needs to be updated. So it was a great suggestion. Like, we do need to have kind of an easily accessible kind of, how do I do my inventory according, you know, in HMIS according to the HMIS data standards, so that we can keep that knowledge fresh and have something for folks to watch if they missed. You know, it's basically on these calls, these system admin calls, HMIS lead calls, where we've gotten into the details of inventory tracking in HMIS. So we will come at it again, refresh everybody's knowledge on it next month, and also work on posting some kind of videos that can be accessed, trainings that can be accessed, or information that can be accessed in a regular way as needed. We don't have any trainings on grant consolidations, and we haven't really gone into them deeply on this call, but we do have a resource on the HUD Exchange. And it's about grant consolidations, if you're doing project closures, or even project transfers, transferring clients from one project to another, kind of a lot of options to consider and things to think through as you make, and there's a number of decisions that you can, or a number of ways that you could go about making some of those changes. And so we try in this one document, which Brian will, I'm sure, find real fast and put in the chat maybe. This is, there's kind of like lots of options for grant consolidations, and there's no right or wrong answer for how to do that in HMIS. There's a lot of things to consider, and so there's a reference for that. Anything else? No? Pretty short call today. Thank you, Brian, for throwing that grant consolidation document in. I think if you feel like you didn't get your question answered, definitely put in an AAQ. We are definitely listening to the feedback on the LSA process, and you know, all of these processes that are out there. Please give us feedback. We're listening to it. If it feels like, you know, if you want more transparency to stuff, or you're not feeling well informed, I mean, let us know those things, because we definitely are here to have this meeting and our listserv, our hub, be an informative, participatory kind of forum for you as HMIS leads. So, so with that, Meredith, how did the
Yes.
dictionary end up? How did the dictionary end up starring on Broadway?
I don't know how.
They were in a play on words. Yay! Okay.
Oh,
We think
so
you guys are
good.
great. Talk to you all soon. February 17th, in fact. Talk to you February 17th, if not sooner. Thanks for all your time today.
Thanks.
Bye.